At the foundation of quantum mechanics lies a phenomenon that completely destroys our traditional understanding of space, time, and individual existence. This isn't theoretical speculation. It's been demonstrated repeatedly in countless laboratories worldwide. Here's what the research shows. When two particles form a quantum connection, they stay linked regardless of the distance between them. Change something about one particle, and the other responds immediately, not after some delay, but instantaneously, even when separated by entire galaxies. This discovery shatters everything we thought we knew about the physical world, because according to Einstein's relativity, nothing can travel faster than light. Yet quantum-connected particles completely ignore this universal speed limit. They behave as though space means nothing, as though time is just an illusion, as though at some fundamental level of existence, all things are unified into one seamless whole. What makes this even more fascinating is that this connection isn't weakened by distance, interference, or time. Scientists have demonstrated quantum entanglement across hundreds of miles, through solid barriers, and even between particles that were entangled in the past, but separated in the present. The connection appears to exist outside of our normal understanding of cause and effect, suggesting that reality operates on principles far more mysterious and interconnected than classical physics ever imagined. Recent experiments have pushed this even further. Researchers have successfully demonstrated what they call quantum teleportation, not moving objects through space, but transferring the quantum state of one particle to another instantly across vast distances. They've created networks of entangled particles that maintain their connection across multiple nodes simultaneously. Some scientists are even exploring whether quantum entanglement might explain phenomena like intuition, telepathy, and the uncanny synchronicities that seem to guide our lives in ways that pure chance cannot account for. But perhaps the most mind-bending discovery is what physicists call retrocausal entanglement, evidence that quantum connections can apparently influence the past. When researchers change the measurement of one particle, it sometimes appears to affect the historical state of its entangled partner, even if that partner was measured hours or days earlier. This suggests that quantum reality operates in ways that completely transcend our linear understanding of time and causality. These discoveries aren't happening in some abstract theoretical realm. Major technology companies are investing billions in quantum computing precisely because entanglement allows information processing that's impossible with classical systems. Quantum computers can perform certain calculations exponentially faster than traditional computers because entangled particles can process multiple possibilities simultaneously rather than sequentially. The implications extend far beyond technology. If consciousness itself operates on quantum principles, and there's growing evidence that it does, then your awareness might be capable of similar non-local connections. Your thoughts, intentions, and emotional states might be entangling with possibilities, people, and circumstances in ways that classical psychology and neuroscience have never considered. Take a moment to really absorb this. This discovery isn't merely about tiny particles in a lab. This is about the very nature of your existence. This is about awareness itself. This is about who you truly are. Quantum physics refuses to draw lines between the one observing and what's being observed. It doesn't create artificial boundaries between consciousness and the physical world. It reveals that your focused awareness literally transforms potential into reality. Your intention chooses which possibility becomes actual. But there's something even more profound. This quantum connection isn't restricted to subatomic particles. It very likely extends to consciousness and identity itself. This realization transforms everything because it suggests that your most evolved self, your ideal future self, your completely healed self, the version of you already experiencing the life you're working to create, doesn't need to be constructed piece by piece. That version might already be real, and even more remarkable, that version might already be quantum-linked with who you are right now. This isn't wishful thinking disguised as science. This is built on solid quantum mechanical principles. Let me be specific. When particles become quantum-linked, they begin sharing what physicists call a unified wave function. This means their individual possibilities merge into one connected system. When one collapses into a definite state, it instantly determines what happens to its partner, no matter how far apart they exist. Now picture your consciousness not as something trapped inside your brain, but as an expansive field that reaches throughout all of space, connecting with every possible version of yourself across countless parallel realities. The instant your inner state shifts, your consciousness field transforms. Through quantum connection, this begins influencing the probability landscape where all your other potential selves exist, not symbolically, but in measurable physical ways. Your internal signal literally rewrites the mathematical equations that govern your identity across multiple dimensions. This goes beyond science fiction. This aligns with what physicist David Bohm described as the enfolded order, a hidden dimension of reality where everything already exists in connection with everything else. Bohm proposed that our experience of separation is merely surface-level illusion. Below that surface, every point across space and time remains fundamentally connected, not just conceptually, but as actual structure. From this perspective, your ideal future isn't a destination you travel toward. It's a frequency you learn to receive. And the key to that reception? Your vibrational state, your way of being, your internal harmony. So we need to ask a different question. Instead of, how do I reach my dream life? We should ask, how do I synchronize with the version of me already living that reality? Because if quantum connection is genuine, and all evidence says it is, then that version of you isn't imaginary. It's an actual, coherent pattern existing within the quantum field. And it's continuously broadcasting a signal, one your consciousness can detect, one your nervous system can tune into, one you can start manifesting into physical form, not through struggle, but through resonance. Here's the crucial understanding. The quantum field has no interest in your wishes. It doesn't react to your spoken words, your hard work, or your ambitions. It responds to harmony. It responds to the frequency of your actual being. And harmony only appears when your thoughts, feelings, and physical body unite into one clear signal. This explains why most people never witness quantum transformations in their lives. They're thinking one way, feeling differently, and acting from yet another place entirely. Their energetic field becomes chaotic, conflicted, and contradictory. So quantum reality responds with confusion, delays, and fragmentation, not because it's being cruel, but because it operates with perfect accuracy. This is exactly why grasping quantum connection matters so much, because once you understand you're already linked to your future self, to your ideal reality, the real question becomes, how pure is the signal you're transmitting? Is your energetic field steady enough to create quantum collapse? Is your nervous system peaceful enough to maintain the transmission? Is your sense of identity consistent enough to sustain the connection? Most people attempt manifestation by imagining outcomes they secretly doubt, speaking affirmations their bodies reject, and taking action driven by anxiety. This isn't harmony. This creates interference. And interference destroys quantum connection because connection demands purity. It requires precision. It needs a signal so clear and consistent that the field cannot possibly ignore it. When that signal finally stabilizes, when your entire system becomes calm, aligned, and surrendered, the field responds, not metaphorically, but according to actual physics. Possibilities collapse into certainty. Reality streams shift. Opportunities appear seemingly from nowhere, not because they were manufactured, but because you finally tuned into the version of yourself capable of receiving them. This represents the fundamental shift we all must make. Stop attempting to force the future through effort and start recognizing that we're already quantum connected with it through our state of being. Your dream reality isn't something you deserve through hard work. It's a frequency you access through alignment. And the only barrier between you and that reality is the signal you're broadcasting in this moment. So if some part of you has been sensing a version of yourself that feels more liberated, more authentic, more peaceful, that's not imagination. That's quantum connection communicating with you. That's the wave function encouraging you to collapse into a different timeline. And the path forward isn't to push harder. It's to tune more precisely. Because you aren't separate from what you desire. You're already quantum linked with it. And the field is constantly listening. We've been conditioned to view the mind as simply a brain function, neurons firing in isolation, a biological computer running programs we call thoughts. But cutting-edge neuroscience, quantum biology, and consciousness studies are uncovering something far more extraordinary. The mind isn't contained within your skull. It isn't local. It isn't limited by physical tissue. It operates as a field, vast, intelligent, and deeply quantum connected with the fundamental fabric of reality. What are the implications? Your thoughts don't remain trapped inside your head. They radiate outward. They leave imprints. They interact with the unified field surrounding you. When you think, particularly when combined with emotion, your brain produces measurable electromagnetic frequencies. Your heart magnifies these frequencies. Your entire system transforms into a broadcasting station. And these signals don't just circulate within your body. They penetrate the quantum field. They shape probability. They become part of the information matrix that determines which version of reality materializes into your experience. Dr. Joe Dispenza calls this transmitting a signal into the field. But this isn't just conceptual, it's measurable biology. When your brain and heart achieve coherence, meaning your thoughts and emotions synchronize, your electromagnetic field becomes highly organized. And this organization is what quantum reality responds to. Coherence generates clarity. Clarity generates collapse. This coherence follows specific patterns. It corresponds to brainwave frequencies that indicate deep concentration, presence, and intuitive knowing. In high beta, the frantic, overwhelmed frequency that dominates most people's lives, your brain becomes scattered, fragmented, and reactive. Your energy disperses, and your connection to the field weakens. But when you shift into alpha and theta, the states linked with meditation, profound intuition, and creative imagination, your brain starts synchronizing. And when your brain harmonizes with your heart, an entirely new field of possibility emerges. Research from the HeartMath Institute demonstrates that the heart's electromagnetic field exceeds the brain's by 60 times in strength, and it can be measured several feet beyond the physical body. This field carries emotional data and affects not only your internal state, but the coherence of everyone around you. When you embody love, gratitude, or trust, your heart generates a coherent frequency that synchronizes your brain. Together, they broadcast a signal that communicates directly with quantum reality. Let's take this understanding further. If your brain and heart can generate coherent signals that influence the field, then your complete nervous system becomes a kind of receiver, a quantum gateway. And the quality of signal you transmit determines which reality you quantum connect with. This isn't spiritual metaphor. This is measurable vibration. This is wave physics. Your thoughts and emotions aren't private experiences. They function as quantum programming. The implications are profound because they mean that the moment you achieve a coherent internal state, where your beliefs, emotions, and bodily sensations align, you transcend locality. You step beyond the illusion of separation. You begin accessing information that doesn't originate from memory, but directly from the field itself. This is what spiritual teachers throughout history have called revelation, insight, or enlightenment. It's what Carl Jung termed the collective unconscious. It's what Bohm described as the implicate order, a flowing, undivided completeness containing all potential realities simultaneously. But now we have quantum physics and neuroscience to explain what was once reserved for mystics alone. Here's the quantum revelation. When your inner world achieves coherent stability, it doesn't just create good feelings, it becomes a magnetic force. It draws timelines toward you. It attracts meaningful coincidences. It collapses realities that match your transmitted signal. And it enables you to quantum connect, literally, scientifically, with a version of yourself already existing in that field. Remember, in quantum reality, time doesn't flow linearly. Every possible version of you exists as a wave function. The one you experience depends entirely on which version your signal resonates with. The future you who embodies alignment, peace, and abundance isn't just a goal. They represent a pattern in the field. They already exist. The question isn't whether they're real. The question is, are you coherent enough to receive their transmission? This is why genuine transformation always starts from within. Because until your inner world becomes coherent, your outer world stays distorted. You cannot quantum connect with clarity while your field contains contradiction. You cannot collapse your ideal future while your nervous system remains trapped in past patterns. Quantum physics teaches us that observation collapses possibility into form through something called the observer effect. But observation in quantum terms isn't passive. It encompasses attention, emotion, and intention. It includes your complete consciousness. And that consciousness broadcasts through your brain, your heart, your entire nervous system, your energetic field. Each time you observe with alignment, you collapse a new version of reality into existence. This leads to a revolutionary insight. The brain doesn't create the mind. It receives, translates, and channels it. What you experience as thought might be less about generating ideas and more about tuning into frequencies, realities that already exist in potential. So when you receive a vision during meditation, when you sense a future self guiding you, when you suddenly understand something you never learned, don't dismiss it as fantasy. Consider that you just tuned in, that your field momentarily aligned, that your consciousness reached across the quantum ocean and connected with your entangled self. Because the mind isn't imprisoned by the brain. It serves as the bridge between dimensions, and your coherence provides the key to crossing that bridge. If your consciousness functions as the signal and the quantum field acts as the receiver, then your mental programming serves as the filter. And most people broadcast distorted frequencies without realizing it. They repeat statements that sound correct, but feel wrong. They visualize futures their nervous system still fears to embrace. They chase timelines that never materialize, not because the field isn't responding, but because their internal programming remains misaligned. This represents the hidden sabotage of subconscious patterns. Let's be direct. Over 95% of your thoughts, actions, and emotional responses operate unconsciously. They're automatic reactions based on beliefs, memories, and emotional patterns stored deep within your neurobiology. From birth, and even before, you absorbed frequencies. You inherited emotional blueprints from your family, society, experiences, and traumas. These became your identity's foundation, and unless consciously reprogrammed, they continue operating silently, inflexibly, invisibly. You might consciously desire freedom while your subconscious still equates freedom with danger. You might speak about abundance while your body prepares for scarcity. You might visualize love while your cells retain memories of betrayal. And the quantum field, precise, neutral, reflective, responds not to your hopes, but to your dominant frequency. That frequency isn't your conscious words. It's the total sum of your coherence. And when unconscious programming fragments that coherence, the quantum connection fails. The timeline stagnates. The future doesn't manifest, not because it's impossible, but because you haven't yet become a vibrational match to receive it. Picture trying to tune in to radio station 97.8 FM, but your receiver keeps jumping between 88.1 and 103.5. That's exactly what happens when your inner programming contains contradictions. One part desires the future, another part fears it. One part trusts the process, another part attempts to control everything. This fragmentation creates static, and static blocks quantum connection. This explains why so many seekers feel stuck, not because the field isn't responding, but because they haven't updated the version of themselves doing the seeking. You cannot collapse a new reality from an outdated identity. And identity operates as programming. It's a script written by experience, strengthened by repetition, and often inherited without choice. If this is resonating with you, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. It helps this frequency reach others who need to hear it. Carl Jung observed, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This applies especially to quantum reality, because the subconscious, not your logical mind, functions as the true observer. It represents your deepest vibrational pattern. It determines how safe you feel receiving, how worthy you believe you are, how much energy you're willing to hold. And until that pattern transforms, the field will continue collapsing the same repetitive loop. Let's examine this through your nervous system. Your body isn't just biological machinery. It's a memory storage system. Every trauma, every suppressed emotion, every unprocessed experience creates physiological responses. Over time, these responses establish your baseline. They become the background frequency of your existence. Tension, uncertainty, hypervigilance, withdrawal, all of which influence your quantum signal. Someone might consciously declare, "I'm ready to receive," but if their body remains locked in survival mode, fight, flight, or freeze, the field receives fear, not readiness. And what returns is more delay, more resistance, more evidence supporting the old timeline. But here's the deeper challenge. Most people blame themselves for this resistance. They believe they're fundamentally flawed, undeserving, or somehow failing at manifestation. They increase effort, push harder, force alignment, and in doing so, they strengthen the exact program they're trying to escape. This is difficult. I'm not ready yet. I must struggle for it. This mental framework blocks quantum connection. You cannot quantum connect with your highest self while operating from a survival state that only knows how to recreate the past. That's why true transformation doesn't begin with motivation. It begins with liberation. Liberation from unconscious programming, from internalized interference, from outdated frequencies that once provided safety but now create limitation. Let me share a story, one that might feel familiar. There was a woman who had everything mapped out. She studied the principles, practiced the techniques, created vision boards, spoke affirmations, meditated consistently. But nothing shifted. The same financial struggles, the same emotional patterns, the same sense of pushing toward a future that never arrived. Until one day, she stopped asking, "What am I doing incorrectly?" and instead asked, "What part of me still doesn't feel safe with this?" And that question opened something profound. She remembered a childhood moment when her family's success led to loss and criticism. Deep in her subconscious, a program had formed. When I succeed, I lose people. When I stand out, I get attacked. When I grow, I get hurt. That programming had shaped every signal she transmitted. No matter how positive her conscious intentions, it wasn't until she brought that story into awareness and rewrote it that the field began responding differently. Because the field doesn't reflect your surface thoughts. It reflects your source frequency. And until that source becomes purified, the signal remains fractured. This isn't about self-blame. It's about awareness. You aren't broken. You're broadcasting. And your broadcast isn't your true nature. It's what you've been programmed to emit. The moment you recognize this is the moment you reclaim your power to reprogram. Because the quantum field isn't loyal to your history. It's loyal to your pattern, and patterns can be rewritten. You aren't too late. You haven't gone too far. You're simply quantum connected with a version of reality shaped by a story that no longer serves you. And now it's time to update the programming. If you've read this far, something within you already understands. The future isn't something you pursue, it's something you connect with. And connection, in quantum terms, doesn't happen through thinking alone. It occurs through coherence, through transformation, through reprogramming the patterns your nervous system has learned to repeat and replacing them with a frequency it once avoided, but is now prepared to embody. So now we transition from concept to calibration, from theory to field experience, from understanding to embodiment. Let's start with a principle supported by both quantum mechanics and neuroscience. Your brain cannot distinguish between a memory and a vivid, emotionally rich imagination. When you visualize something with sensory details and emotional intensity, your brain, and more importantly, your body, begins treating that vision as actual experience. Neural pathways activate, hormones release, your electromagnetic field shifts. You begin transmitting a signal that matches that imagined state, and the field responds, not to whether it's factual, but to whether it's consistent. This is how mental reprogramming actually works. You don't affirm your future into existence through repeated words. You become your future by embodying the frequency of already having it. So take a breath. Find stillness within yourself. Let the guidance that follows move not just through your mind, but through your entire energetic field. Allow it to guide you into alignment, not through force, but through softening, through presence, through openness. Now envision a version of yourself who has already made the quantum transformation. They aren't flawless, but they are complete. They move with clarity. They breathe with ease. They carry a frequency that feels stable, grounded, attractive. They aren't striving. They aren't performing. They are simply being. Observe them in your mind's eye. Where do they live? How do they dress? How do they communicate? How do they carry themselves? What does their life feel like? Not just externally, but emotionally. And now connect with them. Not from a place of separation, but from recognition. Because this version of you isn't in some distant location. They exist here now, and the only separation is the emotional gap between your current frequency and theirs. So begin closing that gap. Breathe as they breathe. Release tension from your shoulders. Soften your jaw. Allow your heartbeat to slow. Let your thoughts quiet. Allow yourself to experience, even briefly, what it feels like to already be them. Maintain this. Stay present with it. Let your system recalibrate. This isn't make-believe. This is quantum alignment. Because right now, in this moment, your nervous system is reprogramming itself. You're replacing the frequency of lacking with the frequency of having. You're dissolving the programming of struggle with the signal of embodiment. And in this state, the field responds. Because the field doesn't react to wanting. It doesn't respond to effort. It doesn't even respond to intention alone. It responds to being, to identity, to resonance. So while maintaining this state, remember, this is the frequency your ideal future responds to. This is the timeline you collapse, not by chasing it, but by matching it. And matching isn't force. Matching is surrender. It is presence. It is willingness to stop telling the old story long enough for the new one to emerge. It is giving your body permission to feel safe in a frequency it was once trained to resist. It is allowing your subconscious to receive a new instruction. I am not the version that struggled. I am the version that remembers. Because true reprogramming is this: not repeating what you want, but becoming who you already are beneath the conditioning. And now, one simple act, small, symbolic, but vibrationally powerful. In your mind, declare the words, "I am quantum connected." Not for anyone else, not for validation, but as a marker in your field, a declaration to quantum reality, a signal of readiness, of coherence, of homecoming. Because when you name it, you claim it. And when you claim it, the field begins responding. You aren't pretending. You're remembering. You aren't creating from nothing. You're collapsing from signal. And the version of you that already lives this truth recognizes you now. Remain here as long as your system allows. Let the vision penetrate your cells. Let the emotions settle into your field. Let the old programming dissolve in the presence of this new frequency. And if it feels subtle, perfect. That means it's genuine. Because quantum change isn't dramatic. It's precise. It moves beneath the surface, in stillness, in sensation, in breath. This isn't performance. This is access. This isn't magic. This is mechanics. And you are the bridge. So let this practice become more than an exercise. Let it be an invitation to live from the signal you've just activated. Let it influence your day, your choices, your posture, your voice. Because the more you maintain this state, even for brief moments throughout your day, the more your field stabilizes. And when your field stabilizes, reality reshapes itself. There arrives a moment, subtle, quiet, unmistakable, when the pursuit ends. When the part of you that has been reaching, struggling, hoping simply releases. Not from defeat, but from recognition. a deep, cellular knowing emerges. What you've been seeking isn't ahead of you. It already exists within. And the real work isn't to arrive there, but to return here. This captures the essence of quantum becoming. You don't attract your ideal life. You become the frequency that matches it, and then reality aligns. But becoming isn't pretending. It's not acting as if from a place of emptiness. It's remembering the version of you that already exists beyond the interference. The self that has always been aligned, expanded, clear. You aren't creating that self. You're collapsing into it. Let's ground this in science. Every possible version of you, wealthy, struggling, healed, wounded, fulfilled, fearful, already exists as a wave function in the quantum field. These wave functions aren't frozen pictures. They're energetic templates, probabilities, vibrational realities that pulse in and out of potential. And the version you experience is determined by one factor: coherence. When your internal state matches the frequency of one of those wave functions, that version collapses into your lived experience. This isn't spiritual metaphor. It's quantum physics. It's the observer effect in action. But not the simplified version you've heard countless times. Observation in quantum terms isn't just visual attention. It's identity. It's being. It's your complete electromagnetic presence functioning as reality's selector. So the question is no longer, how do I reach my dream reality? It's, how do I stabilize in the identity of the version of me already living it? That shift transforms everything. It changes how you breathe. It changes how you enter a room. It changes how you speak to yourself internally. It changes what you accept, what you anticipate, what you prepare for. And here's the paradox. The more you embody who you already are, the less you need to prove it. The more you live from your future, the less you need to chase it. And the field, always listening, always precise, begins collapsing that reality faster than logic can explain. Because when you become the signal, the delay disappears. But let's be real. Becoming isn't always comfortable. It doesn't always feel like victory. Sometimes it feels like discomfort, loss, resistance, because you're not just stepping into a new frequency. You're releasing every part of you that was designed to survive the old one. That release can look like stillness, like uncertainty, like silence. But beneath that silence, something is recalibrating. Your field is stabilizing. Your nervous system is learning that safety is no longer found in the pattern. It's found in the possibility. And the version of you that already exists in that possibility. They aren't waiting for you to impress them. They're waiting for you to trust them. You trust them by walking as they walk. You trust them by thinking from their perspective. You trust them by stopping the broadcast of, "I'm not there yet," and replacing it with, "I'm already living it." This is what Neville Goddard meant when he said, "Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled." He didn't mean force the emotion. He meant stabilize in the identity. Let it become your baseline frequency, your natural state, your home vibration. And once it becomes that, once your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors begin harmonizing with that self, the field stops reflecting your efforts and starts reflecting your essence. Goddard's teachings, developed decades before quantum physics became mainstream, align remarkably with what we now understand about consciousness and reality creation. He taught that imagination, when combined with feeling and assumption, literally reorganizes the quantum field of possibilities. His students reported miraculous manifestations not through struggle or technique, but through what he called living in the end, embodying the feeling of already having what they desired. Modern practitioners have discovered that Goddard's approach works because it addresses the quantum field's language, vibrational consistency. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you're not pretending or visualizing. You're actually shifting your electromagnetic signature to match the frequency of your desired reality. The quantum field responds to this coherent signal by collapsing possibilities that align with your new vibrational pattern. But there's a crucial element that many miss. The assumption Goddard spoke of isn't mental belief. It's a felt sense in the body. Your nervous system must genuinely feel safe and natural in the frequency of your desired reality. This is why simply thinking positive thoughts or repeating affirmations often fails. If your body doesn't trust the new frequency, your quantum broadcast remains aligned with your old reality. This is where understanding trauma and nervous system regulation becomes essential. Many people struggle with manifestation, not because they lack desire or clarity, but because their nervous system associates their dreams with historical pain. Perhaps they were taught that having too much would make them selfish, or that success would isolate them from family, or that being powerful would make them dangerous. These unconscious associations create what psychologists call upper limit problems, internal barriers that sabotage success even when it's within reach. Your conscious mind wants the manifestation, but your nervous system interprets it as a threat to survival or belonging. The quantum field responds to this mixed signal with mixed results: partial manifestations, opportunities that disappear, or success that comes with unexpected complications. The solution isn't to override these protective patterns, but to work with them consciously. This involves what trauma specialists call titration, gradually expanding your nervous system's capacity to hold higher frequencies without activating old survival responses. You learn to achieve your desired state in small increments, allowing your body to acclimate to each new level before proceeding to the next. Advanced practitioners develop what we might call energetic sovereignty, the ability to maintain their chosen frequency regardless of external circumstances or internal resistance. They learn to distinguish between their core essence and their conditioned responses, allowing them to respond to life from their highest potential rather than their historical programming. Because essence is magnetic, and your essence isn't something you earn, it's something you remember. So who would you be today if you knew your dream reality was already established? How would you move? What would you stop justifying? What would you start honoring? These aren't theoretical questions. They are calibration points. Because each time you choose to act from the identity you're becoming, rather than the one you're leaving, you broadcast a new signal. And that signal begins overriding the old programming, gradually, steadily, powerfully. You aren't doing this to convince the universe. You're doing it to collapse into the version of you that the universe has already created. That's why this process isn't about effort. It's about alignment. Not about doing more, but being more coherent. Not about visualizing harder, but about vibrating authentically. Not about forcing change, but becoming the evidence that it already happened. Because when your field becomes identical to the one you desire, there's nothing left to manifest, only timelines left to receive. So breathe into that. Allow yourself to soften. Release the grip. Let the version of you who already knows begin to lead. Not tomorrow. Right now. Because becoming isn't a destination. It is a daily, moment-by-moment return to the you that already exists. Not every transformation announces itself loudly. Sometimes the most powerful shift doesn't arrive with fanfare or breakthroughs or proclamations. It comes in silence, quiet, almost imperceptible, a subtle recalibration of the field, not around you, but within you. A shift so precise, so resonant, that your entire reality begins reorganizing itself without a single word being spoken. This is where authentic manifestation occurs. Not in the shouting, not in the grasping, not in the constant searching for evidence, but in the silent frequency of coherence. Because the quantum field has no need for your performance. It responds to your presence. And when your presence carries no internal conflict, when your frequency hums in quiet alignment, the field moves, without hesitation, without delay. Timelines collapse not through effort, but through elegance, through the vibrational certainty of a being who no longer needs to chase, prove, or defend, because they already are. That is what your quantum-connected self awaits. Not your effort, but your arrival. And here's the mystery. You often won't sense the shift when it first occurs. You'll feel a pause, a release, a strange spaciousness, like something just aligned beneath the surface and the need to control has vanished. You'll find yourself speaking less, doubting less, grasping less. Not because you're trying to be spiritual, but because the version of you who used to cling has dissolved. That dissolution is your confirmation. Because every version of reality you've collapsed so far began as a frequency, and this one, the one that carries your peace, your purpose, your abundance, is no different. It begins here, now, in the calm, in the breath.